You know the moment. You're on a couch with someone, a friend, a roommate, a person you are absolutely not attracted to, and their leg is against yours, and you don't move, and they don't move, and the show is playing and you're not watching it, and their thigh is warm against yours, and your hand drifts to their ankle, and your thumb starts tracing circles on their skin. And you don't even realize you're doing it until they say, very quietly, "You're touching me." That's chapter 3. We're starting at chapter 1. My Straight Roommate by Jace Wilder. A construction foreman who doesn't do guys moves in with a graphic designer who knows better than to fall for one. by awakening. Inferno heat, and a word one of them can't say out loud, yet. Chapter 1.
The guy was shirtless before he even made it through the door. That was the first thing Noah Reyes noticed about Ethan Cole, not the square jaw or the sun-darkened forearms or the way he filled a doorway like he'd been engineered for it. No, it was the fact that the man had apparently decided shirts were optional for apartment viewings, and nobody had thought to correct him. "AC's busted in the hallway," Ethan said, shouldering past Noah with a box like he already lived here. Sweat tracked a line down the center of his chest, disappearing into the waistband of jeans that sat low enough to be a personal attack. "You weren't kidding about the walk-up." "Fourth floor," Noah said. "I mentioned that." "You mentioned it. You didn't mention the stairs were designed by a sadist." Ethan dropped the box on the living room floor and straightened, rolling one shoulder, the movement pulling his obliques taut. He had the kind of body that came from actual labor, thick through the chest, broad across the shoulders, nothing sculpted or vain about it. Just dense, functional muscle under tan skin, with a scattering of pale hair below his navel that Noah absolutely did not follow with his eyes. He did. He followed it. Then he locked that shit down and went to the kitchen. "Water?" Noah called over his shoulder. "God, yes." Noah filled 2 glasses and took a breath. He could already feel the shape of this, the easy energy, the instant comfort, the way Ethan moved through a room like gravity bent around him. He'd seen this movie before. He knew how it ended. With bruises that didn't show, and a lesson he'd already learned once. Not this time. He brought the water out. Ethan took the glass, drained half of it in one pull, and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. His eyes moved around the apartment, open kitchen, living room with a decent couch, hallway leading to 2 bedrooms. Afternoon light cutting through the windows and making the hardwood glow warm. "This is nice," Ethan said. "Way nicer than the last 3 places I looked at." One of them had a bathtub in the kitchen. Like in the kitchen. Next to the stove. "Welcome to New York real estate." Ethan grinned. It was a disarming grin, crooked, unguarded, the kind that made you feel like you were the only person in the room even when you knew better. "So what's wrong with it?" "What?" "The apartment. It's too nice for the price." "What's the catch?" "Roaches? Neighbor who plays the trombone at 3 a.m. Landlord who collects human teeth." Noah leaned against the kitchen counter and crossed his arms. "No catch. My last roommate moved out for a job in Boston. I need someone to split rent by the 1st. You're the 12th person to respond to the listing, and the first one who didn't make me want to change my locks." Ethan laughed, a real laugh, open and unself-conscious, the kind that came from the gut and took over his whole face. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a month." He set the glass down on the kitchen counter and offered his hand. "Ethan Cole. Construction foreman. I don't leave dishes in the sink for more than a day, I don't care about noise, and I pay rent on time. Every time." Noah shook his hand. Ethan's grip was firm, calloused, warm, the hand of someone who worked with his body for a living and didn't think twice about it. It lingered a half-second longer than necessary, Ethan's thumb pressing briefly against Noah's knuckle before releasing, and Noah filed that away in the part of his brain labeled, "Do not open." Noah Reyes. Freelance graphic designer. I work from home, so I'm always here. I keep the place clean. I don't care about noise either, as long as you don't care about me being on video calls at weird hours. Done. Ethan clapped Noah's shoulder, casual, automatic, like they'd known each other for years instead of 4 minutes. His palm was heavy and warm through Noah's t-shirt, and it stayed there for 2 full beats before dropping. When can I move in? You're looking at it. Ethan blinked. Now? You have boxes in my living room and no shirt on. I think we're past the interview stage. That grin again. Wide, easy, dangerous in ways Ethan Cole would never understand and Noah Reyes understood too well. Give me 20 minutes. I've got more stuff in the truck. It took 3 hours to get Ethan fully moved in, and by the end of it, Noah knew several things he hadn't planned on knowing. 1. Ethan was recently single. 3-year relationship, ended a month ago. She said I was emotionally unavailable, he'd said, wedging a mattress through the bedroom door like it had personally offended him. She was probably right. I don't know. I just never felt it with her. Not the way you're supposed to. He'd paused, one hand braced on the doorframe, sweat dripping off his jaw. Is that fucked up? 3 years and I wasn't even sad when she left. Noah had said, maybe she just wasn't the right person, and Ethan had looked at him, really looked, holding his gaze for a beat too long, before shaking it off and going back to wrestling the mattress. 2. Ethan had absolutely no concept of personal space. 0. Non-existent. He stood too close in the kitchen while they figured out shelf distribution, his chest nearly touching Noah's back while he peered over his shoulder at the spice rack. He bumped Noah with his hip to move him out of the way, instead of using words like a normal human being. When they both reached for the same cabinet handle, Ethan's arm went right across Noah's chest, forearm braced against his collarbones, pinning him briefly against the counter. My bad, Ethan said. He didn't move for a full 2 seconds. His forearm was warm and solid and exactly at the height of Noah's heartbeat, which was doing something it had no business doing. 3. Ethan smelled good. Not cologne, just clean sweat and soap and something underneath, something warm and woody and specific that Noah's hindbrain catalogued against his explicit instructions not to. 4. Noah was in trouble. Somewhere around hour 2, Ethan wandered into the living room and stopped in front of Noah's workspace, the corner desk with the dual monitors, the drawing tablet, the organized chaos of reference books and color swatches pinned to a corkboard above the desk. This is yours? Ethan leaned in to study the corkboard, one hand braced on the back of Noah's chair. The position put his face about 8 inches from Noah's shoulder. You did all this? That's what freelance means, yeah. This is actually incredible. Ethan was looking at a logo set Noah had done for a craft brewery, black and copper Art Deco bones with modern edges. His expression was unguarded, genuinely impressed, and something about that, the sincerity of it, the total absence of performance, made Noah's throat tight. You've got serious talent, man. Thanks. I mean it. Ethan straightened and clapped Noah on the shoulder again, the 3rd time today, but who was counting? His hand sliding down to squeeze the back of Noah's neck briefly before releasing. A friendly, fraternal, entirely normal gesture that sent a column of heat straight down Noah's spine. I can barely draw a stick figure. The fact that you make things that look like that is wild. Noah busied himself with a box of books and said nothing, because the alternative was saying something that would reveal exactly how much that casual neck squeeze was reverberating through his nervous system, and he'd known this man for less than 3 hours. They finished unpacking the essentials by early evening. Ethan's room looked like a controlled explosion, boxes half open, clothes draped over a chair, a set of free weights shoved into the corner next to work boots with dried mud on the treads. Noah's room, visible through the open door directly across the narrow hall, was clean, organized, adult. The contrast was instant. Pizza? Ethan asked, dropping onto the couch with the boneless confidence of a man who had never once questioned his right to take up space. His legs spread wide, one arm slung along the back, head tipped to look at Noah with an easy, expectant expression. Still shirtless. still gleaming faintly with the residue of 3 hours of labor. My treat. Housewarming gift. You're warming your own house. And I'm buying you pizza. Don't argue with generosity, Noah. The way he said Noah's name, both syllables like the word mattered, sent a small electric current through Noah's rib cage. What do you like? Anything. No pineapple. Respect? Ethan ordered without looking up, thumb moving fast across his phone. 2 larges, 1 pepperoni, 1 margarita. Extra garlic knots because I'm not a monster. Noah sat on the opposite end of the couch. 3 feet of worn cushion between them. A safe distance. Ethan's arm was still along the back, and if Noah leaned even slightly to his right, Ethan's fingertips would brush his shoulder. He did not lean to the right. So, Ethan said, tossing his phone on the coffee table and turning his body toward Noah, one knee drawing up onto the cushion. Graphic designer. What does that actually mean in practice? Day to day? Clients send me briefs. I translate their terrible ideas into something that doesn't make people's eyes bleed. Occasionally someone has taste, and the job is actually fun. You like it though. I can tell. What gave it away? Your desk. Ethan nodded toward the workspace corner. Nobody keeps a space that dialed in if they don't love what they do. My worksite looks like a bomb went off. Your corner looks like a museum exhibit. Noah's mouth twitched despite himself. I'm particular. You're an artist. Ethan said it simply, no teasing in it. Then he grinned. I build stuff, you make stuff look good. Between us, we could probably pull off something decent. Except his eyes stayed on Noah a beat too long. And when Noah met his gaze, something flickered there, quick, unnamed, gone before it could be examined, before Ethan looked away and rubbed the back of his neck. Tell me about the neighborhood, Ethan said, shifting gears with the easy pivot of someone who didn't examine his own impulses. Where's the gym? 3 blocks east. Ironside Fitness. No frills, but it's got everything you need. I go 4 mornings a week. Morning gym? Ethan shook his head slowly, his expression that of a man witnessing a minor atrocity. That's psychopath behavior. You just moved a mattress up 4 flights of stairs without complaining. You don't get to lecture me about psychopath behavior. Ethan pointed at him, grinning. I complained internally. Very loudly. He stretched then, both arms over his head, his spine arching off the back of the couch. The movement put his entire torso on display, the ridges of his abs contracting, the cut of his hip flexors sharpening into shadow, the trail of fine hair below his navel that Noah had already told himself twice to stop tracking. His jeans slipped another centimeter. Noah studied the ceiling with forensic interest. You can use my guest pass if you want to check it out, Noah said to a light fixture. Yeah? We could go together. I hate working out alone. Need someone to spot me. The image arrived uninvited and fully formed. Ethan flat on a bench, Noah standing over him, hands hovering under the bar, Ethan's face between his forearms, looking up at him from 6 inches away with that easy, trusting grin. Noah dismissed it with the efficiency of long practice. Sure, he said. Tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. I just said morning gym is psychopath behavior. And I just said sure. Ethan laughed. That laugh was going to be a problem. It was warm and open, and it resonated somewhere behind Noah's sternum, and the worst part was that Ethan had no idea. He had no idea what that sound did, the same way he had no idea what his shirtless sprawl did, the same way he had no idea that every casual touch he'd landed in the past 3 hours had been logged, catalogued, and filed in a part of Noah's brain that he'd spent years learning to keep shut. The pizza arrived. They ate on the living room floor because the table was buried under boxes, sitting cross-legged across from each other, knees almost touching, a grease-spotted box between them serving as a table. Ethan ate like he did everything else, fully committed, no pretense. Grease on his chin, low groans of appreciation that were entirely unnecessary and entirely unself-conscious, eating 3 slices to Noah's 1.5 and showing no signs of slowing. "So why'd your last roommate really leave?" Ethan asked, licking garlic butter off his thumb in a way that should have been disgusting and was not. "Boston job." "Sure. But what was the real reason? You didn't murder him, right? You can tell me. I'll help you hide the body." "Kevin got a job at a tech company." "Very boring departure." "No murder." "Kevin." Ethan said the name like he was evaluating it. "Was Kevin cool?" "Kevin was fine. We weren't close. He kept to himself, paid rent, didn't eat my food. Functional cohabitation." Ethan shook his head, pulling a string of cheese from a slice. "That's depressing. If I'm living with someone, I want to actually live with them, you know? Not just exist in the same box. Share meals. Watch bad movies. Argue about whose turn it is to take out the trash. Be actual friends." He looked at Noah. "I want us to be friends. Not just guys who split the electric bill." Something tightened in Noah's chest. Because that was exactly the kind of thing that sounded wonderful in theory and catastrophic in practice when one roommate was openly gay and the other looked like he'd been carved out of sunlight and construction dust and didn't own enough shirts. "We'll see how you feel after a week of my 7 a.m. client calls," Noah said. "I'll bring you coffee." Ethan said it like a fact, not an offer. Like it was already decided. "I'm up at 5:30 for work anyway." "What do you drink?" "Black. 2 sugars." "Noted." Ethan tapped his temple. Filed away. "Consider it done." He reached for another garlic knot, and his knee bumped Noah's in the process. Neither of them moved. The contact was small, just bone through denim, but it radiated warmth up Noah's thigh like a current he couldn't ground. They sat like that for the rest of the meal. Knee to knee on the living room floor, talking about nothing important, the building's hot water schedule, the bodega on the corner that made surprisingly decent breakfast sandwiches, the neighbor in 4C who apparently had 6 cats and a drum kit. Easy conversation. The kind that made time dissolve and made Noah forget, for dangerous stretches, why he needed to be careful. Ethan told a story about a guy on his crew who'd accidentally welded himself to a railing on a job last week, complete with hand gestures and sound effects, and Noah laughed hard enough that his knee pressed harder into Ethan's, and Ethan grinned at him like making Noah laugh was the best thing that had happened to him all day. Maybe all month. Stop, Noah told himself. Stop reading into things. He's like this with everyone. They cleaned up together. Ethan washed, Noah dried. A domestic rhythm that settled into place like they'd rehearsed it, natural and immediate. The kitchen was narrow, 2 people couldn't stand at the sink side by side without touching, and Ethan didn't even try to avoid it. His hip bumped Noah's. His elbow brushed Noah's arm. At one point he reached across Noah for the dish soap, his chest pressing against Noah's shoulder, and left it there for 2 full seconds while he squeezed the bottle. Sorry, Ethan said, not sounding sorry at all. Tight kitchen. It's fine. Noah dried a plate he'd already dried and thought about ice caps melting, tax law, the migratory patterns of Arctic terns, anything that wasn't the heat of Ethan's bare chest against his shoulder blade. He doesn't know, Noah told himself. He has no idea what he's doing. This is how he is with everyone. He's a physical person. This is just his default setting. Which was true. In 3 hours, Noah had cataloged enough data to confirm it. The shoulder squeezes, the hip bumps, the way Ethan steered people with a hand on their arm like personal boundaries were a foreign concept he'd never been introduced to. It was tactile and constant, and it meant nothing. But Noah's body didn't get that memo. His body tracked every point of contact like a seismograph, recording tremors his brain refused to acknowledge, filing them in a place that would keep him up tonight whether he let it or not. By 10 o'clock, the apartment had settled into its new shape. Ethan's things were half unpacked, his personality already imprinted on every surface, a pair of work boots by the door, a flannel draped over the arm of the couch, the faint scent of his soap drifting from the bathroom like something Noah would have to learn to live with. Noah was on the couch with his laptop, catching up on emails he'd blown off all day, when Ethan emerged from the bathroom. In a towel. Just a towel. White, slung low around his hips, knotted carelessly at one side. Water droplets on his shoulders, and in the hollow of his throat. His hair was dark with moisture, pushed back from his forehead, and he was talking, mid-sentence, something about the water pressure or the shower head or the grout, some mundane domestic detail that Noah could not have repeated with a gun to his temple. Because Ethan Cole was standing in his living room, 6 feet 1 inch of damp flushed skin, steam still curling faintly off his shoulders, and he was looking at Noah like this was normal. Like walking through a shared apartment damn near naked while making small talk was something people did. Something he did, regularly, routinely, without a shred of awareness that the person on the couch had stopped breathing. Anyway, the pressure's solid. Way better than my old place. The showerhead's one of those rain ones, right? I could live in there. Ethan rubbed a hand through his wet hair, bicep flexing, water running down his wrist to his elbow and dripping onto the hardwood. The towel shifted with the movement. Noah saw the sharp cut of his hip flexors, the V of muscle disappearing beneath white terrycloth, and felt something in his brain go to static. "That's great," Noah said to his laptop screen. His voice sounded normal. It was the performance of a lifetime. "You good?" Ethan paused in the hallway, one hand braced on the doorframe of his bedroom. The pose was obscene, and he had absolutely no concept of that fact. His body angled toward Noah, hip cocked, the towel riding the absolute limit of what physics and decency would allow, his chest still pink from the heat of the shower. A single droplet of water tracked from his collarbone down through the center of his chest, over his stomach, and disappeared into the fold of the towel. Noah watched it go and hated himself. "You look weird." "Long day." "Yeah. Same." Ethan yawned, a full-body production that involved his arms stretching overhead, his spine arching, every muscle in his torso pulling taut and releasing. The towel stayed on through what Noah could only assume was divine intervention or structural engineering. "I'm gonna pass out." "You said 6 a.m. for the gym." 6 a.m. Psychopath. But he was smiling when he said it, a slower smile than the grin, softer, almost fond. Like Noah was someone he'd known for years. Like this was already comfortable. Already home. "Night, Noah." He knocked his knuckles against the doorframe twice, a casual rhythmic thing like punctuation. Like signing off on a conversation he fully expected to pick up in the morning. Because he lived here now. He'd be here tomorrow morning, and the morning after that, and every morning for the next 12 months minimum, emerging from that bathroom in various states of undress with that easy grin and those heavy hands, and absolutely no idea that his existence was a structural hazard to Noah's carefully maintained equilibrium. "Night," Noah said. Ethan disappeared into his room. The door stayed open. A few inches of dark hallway visible, and beyond it, the edge of his unmade bed, a strip of bare shoulder as he dropped the towel and pulled on shorts. Noah looked away too late and not fast enough. The image, broad back tapering to narrow waist, the curve of his ass before the shorts came up, was already burned in. Fuck. Noah sat on the couch for a long time after the sounds from Ethan's room went quiet. The rustle of sheets. A mattress creaking as 200 pounds of oblivious, careless, impossible man settled into it. Then silence, and the slow rhythm of breathing through the open door. He closed his laptop, pressed his fingertips into his closed eyes until he saw white. He's straight, he told himself. He could still smell Ethan's soap. Could still feel the ghost print of every casual touch, shoulder, hip, arm, neck, knee, imprinted on his skin like a map of places he wasn't allowed to go. He's straight and he's your roommate, and you know exactly how this story ends. He did know. He had the scars to prove it. Not visible ones, but the kind that pulsed when someone stood too close, the kind that tightened his chest every time a man with kind eyes and easy hands treated him like something worth wanting on Tuesday and pretended him away by Friday. Caleb had been like that. Junior year of college. 2 months of stolen touches and desperate whispers behind locked doors, and a slow surgical demolition of everything Noah thought he was allowed to have. Caleb's hand on his hip in the dark. Caleb's mouth on his throat at 2 a.m. And then Caleb introducing his girlfriend at a party, hand on her waist, looking right through Noah like he was a window. Like he was something that had happened to someone else, in a room that didn't exist anymore. Never again. He'd promised himself. Standing in a dorm bathroom at midnight, staring at his own wrecked reflection, he'd sworn. Noah stood. Washed his face. Brushed his teeth. Went to his room and closed the door all the way, firmly, deliberately, because some people in this apartment still understood boundaries. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Through the thin wall, he could hear Ethan breathing. Slow, deep, already asleep. The easy, unconscious rhythm of a man with nothing to keep him up at night, no questions he couldn't answer, no unnamed thing clawing at the inside of his ribs. The apartment was full, in a way it hadn't been for weeks. A new weight in the air. A new gravity. The specific, undeniable displacement of another human being who took up too much room, and stood too close and smelled too good, and had no idea, could never know, what his careless, constant, devastating proximity was doing to the person 6 inches of drywall away. Noah pulled the blanket up. Let out a long, controlled breath through his nose. Closed his eyes. Behind them, Ethan Cole grinned at him in a towel and said his name like it mattered. This is going to be a problem. Chapter 2. Noah made good on the coffee thing. That was what got Ethan first. Not the apartment, not the neighborhood, not the fact that his new bedroom had actual closet space for the first time in his adult life. It was the coffee. Every morning, without fail, by the time Ethan dragged himself out of bed at 5:30, there was a fresh pot on the counter, and Noah was already at his desk in the living room corner, headphones on, doing whatever the hell graphic designers did at an hour that should have been illegal. Monday morning. Day 3. Ethan shuffled out in sweatpants, no shirt, because why would he wear a shirt in his own apartment, and poured himself a cup. Black 2 sugars. Noah had bought the right sugar. Not the generic stuff, the raw turbinado that Ethan hadn't even realized he preferred until he tasted it. You bought sugar, Ethan said, leaning against the counter. Noah didn't look up from his screen. You said 2 sugars. The white stuff tastes like chemicals. You're already a better roommate than my ex-girlfriend. Low bar. Ethan laughed and dropped onto the couch with his mug, legs spread, head tipped back against the cushion. From here he could see Noah's profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the dark hair that curled slightly behind his ear, the tattoo sleeve disappearing under his t-shirt. Noah's hands moved across the keyboard with a precision that was almost hypnotic, quick and deliberate, fingers long and sure. Ethan watched them longer than he meant to, then looked down at his coffee and drank. This was the routine already. Coffee couch quiet. Ethan left for work at 6:15. By the time he got home at 4 or 5, Noah was still at his desk or on the couch or in the kitchen, always there, a constant presence that made the apartment feel less like a box and more like somewhere Ethan actually wanted to come back to. He'd never had that before. Not really. With Megan, coming home had felt like clocking in for a second shift, the emotional one, where he was supposed to talk about his day and ask about hers, and care about throw pillow colors, and remember her mother's birthday, and have opinions about curtains. He'd tried. He'd faked it mostly. She'd seen through it. She'd left. And the loudest thing about her absence was how little noise it made in his life. With Noah, coming home felt like exhaling. Like setting something down he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. He didn't examine that. He just enjoyed it. By Thursday, they'd developed a rhythm that worked without either of them having to try. Mornings, coffee, minimal conversation, comfortable silence. Ethan learned that Noah was not a morning person, despite being awake at obscene hours. He operated on caffeine and autopilot until about 9 a.m., at which point he became an actual human with opinions and the capacity for banter. Before that, he communicated primarily through grunts and gestures, and Ethan found it oddly endearing, this controlled, self-possessed man reduced to caveman functionality before his second cup. Afternoons, Ethan came home to the smell of whatever Noah was cooking. The man could cook, nothing showy but solid, real food. Rice and beans with sofrito that smelled like someone's abuela made it. Pan-seared chicken with skin so crispy it shattered when you cut it. Pasta with a sauce that came from tomatoes and garlic and basil, not a jar. "You don't have to feed me," Ethan said on Tuesday, standing in the kitchen doorway watching Noah work a skillet with one hand and season with the other. Noah cooked the way he designed, focused, efficient, no wasted motion. His forearms flexed when he flipped the pan, the tattoo sleeve shifting with the tendons underneath, geometric lines rippling over muscle, and Ethan's eyes tracked the movement before his brain caught up. "I'm already cooking for one. Adding a second portion costs me nothing." Noah didn't look up. "Sit down and eat." Ethan sat. He ate. It was the best meal he'd had in weeks, and he said so, and Noah's mouth did this thing, a small, pleased curl at the corner, barely visible, like he was holding back a smile he didn't want to give away, and something in Ethan's chest expanded without permission. "Your mom teach you?" Ethan asked. "Yeah." Noah's voice softened the way it always did when he mentioned his mother. She said no son of hers was going to survive on frozen pizza and sadness. "Smart woman." "The smartest." They ate in a silence that felt like a conversation, and when Ethan washed the dishes after, unprompted without being asked, Noah leaned against the counter behind him and said, "You don't have to do that. You cooked. I clean. That's how it works." "Since when?" "Since now." Ethan glanced over his shoulder. Noah was right there, 3 feet away, arms crossed, hip against the counter, watching him with an expression Ethan couldn't decode. Something careful. Something warm. "We're actual roommates, remember? Your words." Noah's mouth twitched. That almost smile again. "My words." Evenings, this was where it got complicated. Or not complicated. Easy. Too easy. That was the problem. It shouldn't have been this easy. They fell into the couch like it was gravitational. Takeout containers or Noah's leftovers on the coffee table, some show neither of them was paying real attention to, their bodies migrating toward the center cushion by degrees so gradual that Ethan only noticed when he looked down and realized his thigh was pressed against Noah's from hip to knee. He didn't move. Why would he? It was just a couch. They were both big enough that sharing it meant touching. Physics. Geometry. Nothing weird about it. Except Noah was warm. Warmer than anyone Ethan had sat next to, or maybe it was just that Ethan was paying attention to it in a way he never had with anyone else. And he smelled like that thing Ethan still couldn't name, clean and warm and a little woody, like cedar and soap and skin that had been in the sun. Every time Noah shifted, his leg pressed harder into Ethan's, and Ethan felt it register somewhere low in his belly in a way that made absolutely no sense and that he refused to think about. By Wednesday, they'd stopped pretending the far ends of the couch existed. Ethan sat in the middle. Noah sat next to him. Their shoulders touched. Noah's foot would end up tucked under Ethan's thigh during a movie, and Ethan would leave it there because moving it would mean acknowledging it, and acknowledging it would mean naming what the warmth of Noah's ankle against his quad was doing to his nervous system. So he just sat there and watched whatever was on the screen and didn't name anything. Thursday night, they were 2 beers deep into a documentary about deep-sea creatures, and Noah made a comment about the mating habits of anglerfish, something dry and devastating about the male literally fusing with the female and dissolving into nothing but a pair of gonads, and Ethan laughed so hard he choked on his beer, and Noah pounded his back, his palm flat between Ethan's shoulder blades, and when the coughing stopped, Noah's hand stayed there. Just resting. Warm and present. They both pretended that was normal too. Friday morning. The gym. They'd gone together every day that week. Ethan had stopped calling it psychopath behavior by Tuesday because, if he was being honest, Working out with Noah was the best part of his morning. Noah was disciplined, no bullshitting between sets, no phone scrolling, just focused, efficient work. He did pull-ups like they owed him money, his back muscles fanning out beneath his tank top, lats flaring, every representative controlled and full range. Ethan spotted him from behind, and told himself he was checking form. He was not checking form. He was watching the way Noah's body moved, the coil and release of it, the lean muscle shifting under brown skin, the concentration on his face that made his jaw tight and his eyes sharp. It was the same focus Noah brought to his design work, the same deliberate intensity, and Ethan found it, what? Impressive. Admirable. Something with a sharper edge than either of those words, something he couldn't quite get his hand around. "Spot me," Noah said, settling under the bar for bench press. "Yeah." Ethan moved behind the rack. Standard position, hands hovering underneath the bar, ready to catch. Noah gripped the bar, set his shoulders and pressed. 185. Good weight for his frame. Ethan watched his form, elbows at the right angle, bar path clean, chest touching on each rep. He was wearing a gray tank top that had no business being that thin, and every representative stretched the fabric across his chest and pulled it taut over his stomach, the ridges of his abs visible through the cotton. Third set. Last rep. Noah pushed and the bar stalled at the midpoint. His arms trembled. His face tightened. Ethan's hands went to the bar instinctively, fingertips landing on the metal next to Noah's grip. "I got you." "Push." Noah pushed. Ethan guided the bar up with 2 fingers of assistance, leaning forward over the bench to keep it centered. The position put his hips directly above Noah's face. His crotch was right there, 6 inches from Noah's chin, impossible to ignore, impossible to reposition without making it worse. His hands were on the bar, knuckles grazing Noah's white knuckle grip, and when Noah racked the weight and looked up, Ethan was right there. Directly above him. Close enough to see the ring of amber around Noah's brown irises, the tiny scar on his eyebrow, the sweat gathered in the dip of his upper lip. Close enough to feel Noah's breath, rapid from the exertion, hot against Ethan's throat. The moment held. Ethan knew he should step back. He knew the appropriate duration for a spotter to hover over a bench was 0 seconds after the bar was racked. He knew that standing here, hands still on the bar, hips over Noah's face, eye contact locked, had left the neighborhood of normal gym behavior and was now in different territory entirely. He didn't step back. Noah's chest rose and fell. A bead of sweat ran from his temple down the line of his jaw, and Ethan watched it travel with an attention that felt too specific, too focused, too hungry. The word arrived unbidden, and he shut it down immediately. Not hungry. Interested. Observant. Normal. What the fuck am I doing? He stepped back, cleared his throat, grabbed his water bottle, and drank from it like he'd been in the desert for a week. "Good set," he said. His voice sounded almost normal. "Close enough. You need to eat more, though. You're benching like a teenager." Noah sat up slowly, wiped his face with the hem of his tank top, pulling it up to reveal a strip of brown stomach and the cut lines above his waistband. Ethan looked at the weight rack, looked at the floor, looked anywhere. "You really need to work on your compliments," Noah said. "It's called constructive feedback. It's called being an asshole." Ethan grinned because grinning was easy. Grinning was the thing he did instead of examining why his pulse was doing something it shouldn't, and why his skin still felt warm where Noah's breath had landed, and why, when he closed his eyes during his own set, the image behind his lids wasn't the ceiling or the bar or anything useful. It was Noah's face looking up at him, dark-eyed and flushed from 6 inches below. "He's your roommate. Get your shit together." He loaded the bar for his own set and didn't ask Noah to spot him. He didn't trust the position. Didn't trust what his body might do with Noah standing over him, Noah's hands near his chest, Noah's hips above his face. He didn't think about why he didn't trust it. He just grabbed a pair of dumbbells and pressed those instead. Friday evening. Couch. Beer. Some action movie that was 90% explosions and 10% dialogue, written by someone who'd never spoken to another human being. They were in their usual configuration, center of the couch, shoulders touching, legs parallel. Ethan had one arm along the back behind Noah, not touching him but close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating off Noah's neck. He'd stopped questioning the arm position thing by Wednesday. It was just where his arm went. Structural preference. The couch back was at the exact right height for his arm. That's all it was. Noah was drinking a beer and laughing at the movie, not at the plot, at the absurdity. He had this laugh he saved for things that genuinely caught him off guard, this low, surprised sound from deep in his chest, and every time it happened, Ethan felt it vibrate through the cushion and into his own ribs like a second heartbeat. His phone buzzed. Jake. How's the new place? Ethan typed back one-handed, the other arm still behind Noah. Good. Apartment's great. And the roommate? Hot? Ethan stared at the screen. His thumb hovered. Something hot and sharp flared in his chest, not anger, not exactly. More like the feeling of a door being opened in a room he didn't know existed. Fuck off. He's my roommate. Lol, relax bro, just asking. You mention him like every text. Ethan scrolled up through his recent messages with Jake. Monday, Noah made this insane rice and beans. I'm ruined for takeout. Tuesday, hit the gym Noah this morning. His pull-up form is legit. Wednesday, Noah said the funniest shit about the neighbor's cats. Thursday, Noah's working on this logo that's actually incredible. Dude's talented. 4 days. 4 texts. All Noah. He's just a cool dude, Ethan typed. Don't make it weird. I'm not the one making it weird, bro. Ethan put his phone face down on his thigh and stared at the movie. On screen, something exploded. He didn't see it. You good? Noah asked. He turned his head, and from this close, half lit by the TV, shadows pooling in the hollows of his collarbones, his face was all sharp angles and dark eyes. The light caught the edge of his cheekbone, the full curve of his lower lip. Ethan noticed this the way he'd notice a building or a painting. Aesthetics. Structure. Nothing personal. Nothing personal, he told himself firmly. Yeah. Jake being Jake. The guy from your crew? Yeah. He's an idiot. Noah studied him for a second with those dark, precise eyes that read too much. Then he shrugged and turned back to the movie, and his shoulder settled more firmly against Ethan's, and Ethan let it because it felt good and because not letting it would have required acknowledging why. The movie dragged on. They finished their beers. Open seconds. The apartment got dark, just the blue-white flicker of the screen painting their faces, the sounds of fictional gunfire and real silence layered together. At some point, Noah's head got heavy. His breathing changed, slowed, deepened, smoothed out into the rhythm of someone gone. His body listed sideways by degrees until his temple came to rest against Ethan's shoulder. Ethan went completely still. Noah was asleep. Dead out, his face slack and unguarded against the cotton of Ethan's t-shirt. His eyelashes were long. That was something Ethan hadn't noticed before, the ridiculous, unfair length of them, dark crescents against his cheekbone. His breath came warm and rhythmic through the fabric, each exhale a small bloom of heat on Ethan's upper arm. His lips were parted slightly, the lower one full and soft-looking, and Ethan stared at it for a long, absent, thoughtless moment before catching himself. He should wake him up. Nudge him, say hey, go to bed, be normal about it. That's what roommates did. That's what anyone would do. He didn't move. He sat there for 20 minutes with Noah's head on his shoulder and watched a movie he could not have named at gunpoint. His arm was still along the back of the couch, and at some point, he didn't decide it, his hand just moved, his fingers found the collar of Noah's shirt and rested against the fabric. Not quite touching skin. Close. The warmth of Noah's neck radiated into his knuckles through a single layer of cotton, and it felt like holding his hand over a flame. What am I doing? The question floated through his mind, and he let it pass, because the answer might be something he wasn't ready for. Noah shifted in his sleep, turned his face into Ethan's shoulder, nose pressing against his deltoid, one hand coming up to curl loosely against Ethan's chest. An unconscious motion, the instinctive seeking of warmth, of proximity, of a body nearby. It meant nothing. Ethan's heart was hammering so hard he was surprised it didn't wake Noah up. He could feel it in his throat, his wrists, his temples. A heavy, insistent pounding that had nothing to do with the action movie, and everything to do with the weight of Noah's hand on his chest, the feather brush of Noah's hair against his jaw, the warmth of him, the closeness, the smell, cedar and soap and sleep-warm skin. It's just comfort. That's all. He's comfortable. I'm comfortable. This is what roommates do when they actually get along. This is normal. It didn't feel normal. It felt like standing on a ledge. Noah's phone buzzed on the coffee table. The sound sliced through the silence and Noah jerked awake, lifting his head, blinking. He looked at Ethan from 4 inches away, disoriented, his eyes soft and unfocused and his lips parted with sleep. For one full suspended beat, neither of them moved. Then Noah registered the position. His head on Ethan's shoulder. His hand on Ethan's chest. Their faces close enough to share air. He pulled back. Sat up. Rubbed his face. Sorry. His voice was thick with sleep. Didn't mean to pass out on you. No worries. Ethan's voice was steady. He was extremely proud of that. You snore, by the way. Noah looked at him. You didn't move me. The words hung in the dim apartment like smoke. A simple observation that was also a question, and behind the question was something bigger, a door standing open to a room Ethan couldn't see into. Didn't want to wake you up, Ethan said. Which was true. It was also maybe 30% of the truth. The rest of the truth lived somewhere he wasn't ready to go. Noah held his gaze. 1 second. 2. His expression was careful, guarded, like he was solving a problem and didn't like the answer he was getting. Then he nodded. Stood. Picked up his phone. I'm going to bed. For real this time. Yeah. Same. Night, Ethan. Night. Noah walked down the hall. His door closed all the way, the soft click of the latch that Ethan was starting to understand as deliberate. A line drawn. A boundary maintained. Noah closed his door every night like it was the last responsible thing he did before sleep, and Ethan left his open like he'd never once had a reason to keep the world out. He sat on the couch for another 10 minutes in the dark. The TV had auto-paused, asking if he was still watching. He wasn't. He was staring at the hallway where Noah had disappeared, and pressing his hand flat against his own chest, against the exact spot where Noah's hand had rested, like he was trying to hold the warmth there before it faded. He lay in bed with his hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling. Friday night. End of the first week. He should have been asleep an hour ago. He'd been up since 5:30, put in a full shift pouring concrete in August heat, hit the gym before that. His body was exhausted. His brain was wide fucking awake. His brain was doing something it didn't usually do, which was replay things. Ethan Cole was not a man who replayed moments. He moved forward. He handled what was in front of him, and let everything else fall off the back. He didn't linger on the shape of a conversation, or the weight of a silence, or the exact temperature of someone's breath on his skin through a t-shirt. Except tonight he was replaying all of it. Noah's hands on the keyboard. Noah's laugh, the real one, the surprised one, the low sound that hummed in Ethan's bones. Noah looking up at him from the bench press, dark-eyed and flushed and breathing hard. Noah's head heavy on his shoulder, trusting in a way that felt like a gift Ethan hadn't earned. You didn't move me. No. He hadn't. He'd sat there with his roommate asleep on his shoulder, and his fingers brushing the collar of his roommate's shirt, and his heart trying to punch through his ribs, and he hadn't moved. Not because he was being polite. Because moving would have felt like losing something. So what? He argued with the ceiling, rolling onto his side. He's my roommate. He's a good guy. I'm comfortable around him. I've always been physical with people. I'm a physical person. That's all this is. It doesn't mean. He stopped the sentence before it could finish because he didn't know what word went at the end, and he sure as hell didn't want to find out. Through the wall, Noah's fan hummed. The sound was steady, rhythmic, and Ethan matched his breathing to it without meaning to, the way you synced with someone's footsteps when you walked beside them. Automatic. Unconscious. The kind of thing your body did when it recognized someone as yours. Safe, he corrected. When it recognized someone as safe. He closed his eyes. Behind them, Noah looking up from the bench. Dark eyes. Parted mouth. Sweat on his lip. The memory of his breath, warm and fast against Ethan's throat. Ethan's body responded before his brain could intervene. His cock stiffened against his thigh, sudden and insistent, and his hand moved beneath the blanket, down his stomach, fingers grazing the waistband of his boxers. He stopped. Pulled his hand back like he'd touched a hot stove. No. Absolutely not. He rolled onto his stomach, shoved his face into the pillow, and pressed his hips hard into the mattress to kill the sensation. It didn't work. His cock was trapped against the sheets, aching, and every shift of his hips made it worse, and behind his closed eyes Noah was still there, dark eyes, parted lips, warm breath. This is nothing. This is proximity and adrenaline, and a weird week. You are not hard because of your roommate. You are not. He was. He was hard, and he was thinking about Noah, and those two facts existed simultaneously, and he had no idea what to do with that. He lay face down in the dark and willed his body to stop. Eventually, grudgingly, it did, the arousal banking to embers instead of flame, still there, still warm, not gone. Just contained. He fell asleep eventually. It took a long time. And if he dreamed about dark eyes and warm hands, and the weight of someone's head on his shoulder, he didn't remember it in the morning. He made damn sure he didn't remember it. Chapter 3. It started with Noah's mouth. 2 weeks in, and Ethan couldn't stop looking at it. Not in any way he could explain or defend, not the normal human act of watching someone talk. This was different. This was Ethan standing in the kitchen at 7 a.m. with cooling coffee, watching Noah on a video call at his desk across the room, and tracking the shape of his lips around every syllable like he was committing the geometry of the man's face to permanent memory. Noah was talking to a client about color theory. Ethan didn't give a single shit about color theory. He gave a shit about the way Noah's lower lip pulled slightly to the left when he was thinking, and the way he caught the corner of it between his teeth when he disagreed with someone but was too professional to say so, and the way it looked when he smiled, not the controlled version he gave clients and strangers, but the full one. The rare one. The one that crinkled the corners of his eyes and took over his whole face, and hit Ethan somewhere behind the sternum like a fist he hadn't braced for. What the fuck is wrong with me? He'd been asking himself that question with increasing frequency. Twice a day minimum, usually while staring at some part of Noah he had no business studying this closely. The interval between questions was shrinking. The answers were getting worse. It wasn't just the mouth. It was the hands, Noah's hands, long-fingered and precise, moving across his keyboard or gripping a pen or wrapping around a coffee mug in a way that made Ethan's throat tighten for reasons he refused to examine. It was the way Noah stood, weight on one hip, arms crossed, head tilted, always reading the room and never performing for it. It was his voice when he was relaxed, that low, warm register that ran down Ethan's spine like a fingertip tracing vertebrae. It was the goddamn tattoos. Noah's left arm was a full sleeve, geometric shapes interlocking with botanical illustrations, sharp lines softened by leaves and petals, all in black and gray with hits of deep green. 2 weeks and Ethan still couldn't see the whole design because it shifted constantly, new details revealing themselves every time Noah reached for something or flexed his wrist or pushed his sleeve past his elbow. Tuesday afternoon. Noah at the kitchen counter slicing tomatoes, sleeve pushed up, the muscles of his forearm working with every cut. Ethan at the table, phone in hand, screen dark, eyes locked on ink and skin. There was a pattern he hadn't caught before. Interlocking hexagons that dissolved into a vine running along the inside of Noah's wrist, and Ethan was hit with the sudden, visceral urge to reach across the counter and trace it with his fingertip. To follow the line from wrist to forearm to bicep, and over the curve of shoulder, and wherever it disappeared under cotton. To map the whole thing with his hands, like reading something written in a language his fingers already knew. His hand twitched against the table. He picked up his coffee instead. Drank. Did not touch anyone. He's good-looking, Ethan told himself. Anyone would notice. Objectively attractive. I have functioning eyes. Noticing things is not a crime. The rationalization was crumbling. Because he'd had attractive friends before, plenty of them. He'd never wanted to trace the lines of their tattoos. He'd never tracked the shape of their mouths while they ate. He'd never felt his pulse stutter because someone smiled at him across a kitchen. The problem was that Ethan's body had stopped consulting his brain. He'd always been physical, stood close, touched casually, used proximity like language. That wasn't new. What was new was the targeting. The precision. The way his body had locked onto Noah like a guidance system, and refused to recalibrate no matter how hard Ethan jammed the controls. He was positioning himself in the kitchen, so Noah would have to brush past him. He wasn't deciding to do it. His body just found the angle, planted itself at exactly the spot that turned a normal kitchen into a gauntlet of accidental contact. Wednesday morning it happened twice. The second time, Noah turned from the cabinet and his chest pressed against Ethan's arm, not a brush but a press, solid and warm through both their shirts, and electricity shot down Ethan's body into his feet, and he thought with horrifying clarity, I stood here so that would happen. I engineered this. Why? Why was he running spatial calculations in a 9x12 kitchen, like a man solving for maximum contact? Why did the press of Noah's chest against his arm send a current straight into the pit of his stomach, hot and liquid and completely unmistakable? He didn't have answers. He had rationalizations, and they were collapsing under the weight of evidence. At work it was leaking through. Wednesday afternoon, Jake caught him staring into space during a concrete pour, the kind of distraction that got people hurt on a site with moving machinery and wet cement. Hey! Jake snapped his fingers in front of Ethan's face. Earth to coal. Where'd you go? Nowhere. I'm here. You're not here. You've been on another planet all week. Jake squinted at him, hard hat pushed back. You sick? Girl trouble? What? Nothing. Didn't sleep well. Your roommate keeping you up? The question was innocent. Jake meant noise. But Ethan's face did something it shouldn't have, a flicker of heat across his cheeks, and he turned away before Jake could read it. Nah. New apartment. Still adjusting. Him. Jake didn't sound even slightly convinced, but he let it go and walked back to the crew, and Ethan stood in the August sun pretending to check the rebar spacing while his mind replayed for the 100th time the feeling of Noah's chest against his arm in the kitchen that morning. The warmth of it. The solidity. The way his body had angled into it instead of away, seeking more contact instead of less, his whole system overriding 6 months of instructions to stop. Thursday morning made everything worse. Noah walked out of the bathroom in track pants and no shirt, reversing their usual dynamic, and Ethan's brain crashed like a hard drive that had been asked to process one file too many. Noah's body was leaner than his but carved. Muscle laid close to bone, every line visible, built from pull-ups and discipline rather than iron. The tattoo continued over his shoulder and across part of his chest, geometric patterns framing his collarbone, like they'd been designed by someone who understood the architecture beneath them. His skin was brown and smooth, and there was a dark trail from his navel that disappeared into the waistband of his pants, and Ethan's eyes went there and stayed, and he could not look away fast enough. Morning, Noah said, toweling his hair. The motion lifted his arm, flexed his chest, caught the kitchen light across the ridges of his stomach, and Ethan was just standing there openly staring at his shirtless roommate at 6 in the morning like a man who had lost all jurisdiction over his own eyes. "Morning." Gravel voice. He cleared his throat. "Coffee's ready." "I made it." "Right?" "Yeah." Noah gave him a look, quick assessing that flicker again, and walked past to his desk. His back was as devastating as his front. The tattoo curled across his shoulder blade. His spine was a clean line between lean muscle. Ethan watched him go and thought, I am watching this man walk across a room, and my mouth is dry and my hands are shaking, and I cannot remember the last time a woman made me feel anything close to this. That thought was new. That thought was the worst one yet. Because it wasn't just about noticing Noah. It was about the comparison. It was about every woman he'd ever been with, Megan and the ones before her, lined up against this feeling and coming up short. Every one of them. Every single time. He drank his coffee. It was cold. He didn't care. Thursday afternoon split something open. Ethan got home from work at 4, dusty and wrecked, his shoulders knotted from hauling drywall. He could hear Noah's voice through the apartment door before he turned the key, not the professional tone, the warm one. Animated. Laughing. He let himself in and stopped in the doorway. Noah was pacing the living room with his phone, mid-story, doing voices, a waiter, a friend, himself, with comic timing and expressiveness that Ethan had never seen from him. This wasn't the controlled, precise Noah who worked at his desk and kept his emotions in clean compartments. This Noah was loose and bright and unguarded, laughing at his own joke, and when he turned and saw Ethan, his whole face opened up and he grinned, the real grin, the full one, the one that rewired Ethan's chest every time, and mouthed one sec and held up a finger. Ethan nodded. Set down his bag. Went to the kitchen. Poured water. Normal motions. His hands were steady. Good. But from the kitchen doorway he could see Noah in profile, pacing in front of the windows. Late afternoon light was turning his skin gold. His hand cut through the air while he talked. His laugh filled the apartment like something physical, warm, full, everywhere. And Ethan stood there watching this man be alive and happy and beautiful. The word arrived uninvited and he couldn't send it back, couldn't unsee it, couldn't unfeel what it did to the center of his chest, and something contracted behind his sternum. Tight. Sudden. Like a lock he hadn't known was there, turning. Not pain. Something worse. Recognition. He set down the glass. Walked to the front door. Put on sneakers. Going for a run. Noah covered the phone. You just got home. Need to clear my head. Noah's eyes searched his face. Something shifted in them, concern or a recognition of a different kind. You okay? Fine. Back in 30. He ran. Hard. Down 4 flights, out the building, east toward the river. No music. No plan. Just sneakers pounding concrete, and the burn in his lungs, and the deliberate, violent overriding of every thought that wasn't footstrike and breath and pavement. He ran until his shirt was soaked through and his quads were shaking. Stopped at the railing along the river walk, hands on knees, bent double, heaving. The water was gray-brown and flat. It didn't give a shit about Ethan Cole's problems. Fair enough. 3 weeks ago, he'd been simple. Straight. Uncomplicated. Clear about who he was, and what he wanted and who he wanted it from. Now he was jerking off to his roommate's face, and going for panic runs because the man's laugh made his chest seize, and he'd just used the word beautiful about another man unironically, in the privacy of his own mind, and he couldn't take it back because it was true. He straightened. Braced his hands on the railing. Stared at the river. I'm not this. I've never been this. I've had girlfriends. I liked them. I'm not. But his body was telling a different story. His body had been screaming it for 2 weeks through every engineered collision, every held glance, every night in the dark with his hand around himself and Noah's name lodged behind his teeth. He spat. Turned. Ran back. By the time he showered and came out, Noah was off the phone and cooking. He didn't ask about the run. Just set a plate in front of Ethan and sat across from him with his own. They ate. Arroz con pollo. It was perfect, like everything Noah made, and Ethan told him so, and Noah looked pleased in that quiet, contained way that made Ethan want to say it again just to see it twice. "You want to talk about it?" Noah asked. Carefully. Like the question itself was a door he was holding open, but not walking through. "Talk about what?" "Whatever sent you running out of here, like the building was on fire." Ethan chewed. Swallowed. Just had a long day. Noah studied him. Those dark eyes that read too much, that saw through every piece of deflection Ethan threw up, and chose, with what Ethan was beginning to realize was extraordinary discipline, not to call him on it. "Okay," Noah said. And that was it. No push. No probe. Just okay, and the space to be whatever Ethan needed to be, and the devastating patience of someone who already understood the shape of what was happening and was waiting without expectation, without hope, for Ethan to catch up. They did the dishes. Ethan washed. Noah dried. Their hips bumped twice in the narrow kitchen. Both times Ethan felt it everywhere. Thursday night. The couch. Their usual formation, Ethan's center, arm along the back. Noah beside him, their legs flush from hip to ankle. Some detective show playing. Neither of them watching. Every nerve in Ethan's body was awake. His thigh against nose. His fingertips near the back of Noah's neck. The heat building between them like a charge. His skin felt like it had been turned inside out, raw, oversensitive, every receptor maxed. Noah had one leg drawn up, bare ankle resting against Ethan's thigh. Shorts tonight. The skin of his ankle was smooth and warm against Ethan's sweatpants. Such a small, stupid, insignificant point of contact. An ankle. Who fixated on an ankle? Ethan's hand moved. He didn't decide it. His fingers drifted down from the couch back slowly, without intent, and found Noah's ankle. Settled around it. Loosely. Naturally. Like they'd always gone there. His thumb found the knob of bone on the inside, found the soft hollow beneath it, and began to trace. Slow circles. Thumb pad against warm skin. A rhythm that matched his pulse. He was doing this the way you'd stroke a cat in your lap, absent, automatic, something his hand chose without consulting the rest of him. Except he was aware. Every millimeter was catalogued, the texture of Noah's skin, finer than his own, the faint ridge of tendon beneath, the warmth flooding through his thumb into his palm and wrist and bloodstream. His thumb circled and circled, careful and tender, a gesture so intimate it had no business existing in a living room on a Thursday night between two people who were supposed to be watching television. Noah went completely still. Not a flinch. Not a jerk. A quiet, total cessation of movement. His breathing changed. Ethan could feel it through every point of contact, the shift from easy to held, the careful quality of it, like someone standing at the very edge of something and deciding whether to step off or step back. The air in the apartment thickened to something solid. The TV sounded like it was playing in a different building. Ethan's thumb stopped. He looked down. His hand was cradling Noah's ankle. His thumb pressed into the soft hollow below the bone. He saw what he'd been doing, felt the shape of it, the tenderness of it, and the recognition slammed into him like a physical force. Neither of them moved. "You're touching me." Noah's voice. Quiet. Not angry. Not uncomfortable. Observational. A fact stated without judgment, a door held open without pressure, giving Ethan the chance to hear the words and decide what they meant, decide what he'd been doing, decide who he was in this moment and what happened next. Ethan's hand jerked away like he'd touched a burner. Sorry. Too fast. Too loud. Wasn't thinking. Noah's ankle remained on his thigh, but the air around them had been chemically altered. Charged. Electric. The held breath between lightning and the crack that follows. It's fine, Noah said. It was not fine. Every molecule in the room knew it was not fine. The careful, measured way Noah said it, the controlled neutrality of someone who had been in this exact situation before, who had felt this exact tension with a man who called himself straight and knew how the story ended, told Ethan that Noah understood everything about what had just happened. Every layer, every implication, every word that hadn't been said. And he was choosing not to name it, choosing to give Ethan the exit. Ethan took it. He stared at the TV screen and saw nothing. His face was on fire. His hand, the one that remembered Noah's ankle with photographic precision, was curled into a fist on his own knee, and the ghost of that soft hollow was imprinted on his thumb like a scar. They watched the rest of the episode without touching. 3 inches of couch cushion between them, a distance that felt like a continent. The silence was louder than shouting. Ethan could feel Noah's warmth from here, right there, but the invisible line had been drawn by 2 words and a tone of voice, and he couldn't cross it without saying something he wasn't capable of saying. Noah's breathing was even. Controlled. The breathing of a man with practice holding himself together when things fell apart around him. 2 episodes played. Neither stopped the autoplay. Neither spoke. Finally Noah stood. Collected his glass. I'm calling it. Yeah. Same. Noah paused at the edge of the hallway. Half turned. TV light caught the planes of his face, jaw, cheekbone, the dark eyes that held something careful and tired and sad. Ethan. Yeah? A beat? That look. I see exactly what's happening to you. I've seen it before. I'm not going to be the one who names it, because the last time I named it, it destroyed me. Nothing. Good night. His door closed. All the way. The latch clicked with a finality that echoed. Ethan didn't go to bed. He sat on the couch in the dark, hands between his knees, and tried to think clearly about what had just happened. He'd been caressing Noah's ankle. Caressing. There was no softer word for it. His thumb had been drawing circles on warm skin with a tenderness that belonged to lovers, not roommates, not friends, not 2 men watching a cop show on a Thursday, and Noah had let it happen for what felt like a full minute before speaking, and the silence before those 2 words had been the loudest thing Ethan had ever heard in his life. You're touching me. He sat there until the TV timed out. Until the room went dark. Until the only sound was the refrigerator humming and the faint rhythm of Noah breathing through the wall. He went to his room. Stripped to boxers. Lay on top of the sheets. His skin was too hot, the apartment too small, the wall between them too thin and not thin enough. Through the wall, silence. No fan. Noah was either awake or sleeping with the practiced discipline of someone who'd learned, long ago, to close the lid on things that hurt. Ethan stared at the ceiling. Heart running too fast. He replayed the moment. Noah's ankle in his hand. The warmth. The softness of that hollow. The circle his thumb traced over and over, gentle as something sacred. You're touching me. Heat flooded him, face, neck, ears, and his cock hardened against his thigh. Not a slow build. An ambush. The same ache that had been visiting him nightly, arriving now with zero pretense, his body no longer bothering to disguise what it wanted. Last time he'd stopped himself. Rolled over. Refused. Tonight, he was out of willpower. His hand slid down his stomach. Under the waistband. His fingers closed around himself, and the relief was immediate. A sharp gasp bitten back, his hips lifting, his head pressing into the pillow. Fully hard. Leaking at the tip. His body had been waiting for this, primed by weeks of denial and the memory of warm skin under his thumb pad. He stroked himself in the dark. Slow at first, then faster, urgent, the slick rhythm of his fist obscenely loud in the silent room. His breath came ragged through clenched teeth because he could not make a sound. Could not. Because Noah was right there, 6 inches of dry wall, and the thought of Noah hearing this, hearing Ethan fall apart with his name caught behind his teeth, sent a pulse of heat through his cock so hard his vision whited out at the edges. He came devastatingly. Back arched off the mattress, jaw clamped shut around a sound that would have been Noah's name if he'd let his mouth open. Behind his closed eyes it was vivid, specific, inarguable. Noah looking up at him from the bench, dark-eyed and flushed. Noah's mouth. Noah's hands. Noah's voice low and knowing, "You're touching me." He lay in the aftermath. Forearm across his eyes. Softening in his own fist. The evidence of what he'd done, cooling on his stomach. Heart slamming. Mind empty for the first time in 2 weeks, scrubbed clean by an orgasm that had been building since the day he moved in. Fuck. He cleaned up with a shirt from the floor. Lay back down. Pressed his face into the pillow, and waited for the shaking in his hands to stop. 2 weeks. That's all it had taken. Coffee and couch cushions and shared meals and an ankle, and the sound of Noah's laugh through a wall. 2 weeks for Ethan Cole to go from "I'm straight" to "I just came harder than I've come in my entire life," and the only thing in my head was his face. Sleep came late. Fitful. Full of hexagons dissolving into vines on brown skin, and a hollow beneath a bone that fit his thumb like it had been made for him. In the morning, he couldn't look Noah in the eye over coffee. He looked at his mouth instead. Then he caught himself, and looked away. Not fast enough. From the corner of his vision he saw Noah's expression, guarded, careful, and beneath it, barely visible, something that looked like recognition. Like sadness. Like a man who had seen this exact car crash in slow motion before, and already knew the sound it made when it hit. Chapter 4. Noah knew he should have said something. Not about the ankle, that would have made it worse, would have cracked the thing open before either of them was ready for what was inside. But he should have said something after. Should have drawn a line. Should have sat Ethan down the next morning over coffee, and delivered the speech he'd been rehearsing in his head since the night he watched those calloused fingers wrap around his ankle, and that rough thumb trace circles on his skin with a tenderness that made his chest ache. The speech went like this: "You're straight. I'm not. What's happening here is not going to end the way you think it will, because you haven't thought about it at all. You're running on instinct and curiosity, and whatever chemical cocktail your brain is producing when we're on that couch, and when the fog clears, I'm the one who's going to be standing in the wreckage. So we need to stop. We need to put 3 feet of distance between us and keep it there, and you need to stop touching me like that, because I am not strong enough to keep saying it's fine when we both know it's not." It was a good speech. Clear. Rational. Self-preserving. He didn't give it. He didn't give it because Ethan walked out of the bathroom on Friday morning in a towel, still damp, and leaned right past Noah to grab a mug from the cabinet, and his arm brushed Noah's and he smelled like soap and warm skin, and he said "morning" from 6 inches away with water still beating on his shoulder, and Noah forgot every word of the speech he'd spent all night composing. "Morning," Noah said. His voice was steady. His hands were not. They stood there. 6 inches apart. Ethan's arm against Noah's, bare skin on bare skin, the contact point burning like a brand. Neither of them moved. The coffee maker hissed. The clock on the microwave blinked. 2 full seconds passed in which Noah could feel Ethan's body heat radiating against his side like standing next to a furnace, and he could smell him, soap and something deeper, something warm and specific that had taken up permanent residence in the part of Noah's brain he was trying to keep shut, and he could have turned his head and their mouths would have been close enough to share air. He didn't turn his head. Ethan reached past him. Took the mug. Stepped back. The loss of warmth was physical, a sudden chill that ran up Noah's arm and settled in his chest. "Good coffee," Ethan said, pouring. Normal voice. Normal morning. As if the last 4 seconds hadn't contained enough charged silence to power a city block. "Thanks," Noah said to the backsplash. He gripped the counter until his knuckles whitened. He waited until Ethan took his coffee to the couch. Then he exhaled. "I have to stop this. I have to stop this before it stops me." Riley came over that afternoon. Noah's best friend since sophomore year of college, sharp, protective, the kind of person who could read a room in 30 seconds and had zero hesitation about saying what he found there. Riley was 28, worked in finance, dressed like he had opinions about thread count, and had watched Noah put himself back together after Caleb with the patient, furious care of someone who would never forgive the person who made the repairs necessary. He showed up with iced coffees and an agenda Noah could smell from the hallway. "So," Riley said, settling onto the couch and scanning the apartment with forensic precision. "This is the place. This is the place. It's nice." Riley's eyes landed on the second pair of work boots by the door. The flannel draped over the arm of the couch. The free weights visible through the open bedroom door across the hall. Very cozy. Very domestic. "Where's the roommate?" "Work. He won't be back until 4. "The construction foreman." "That's the one." Riley sipped his coffee and studied Noah with the expression of a man performing triage. "And how's that going?" Noah sat in the chair across from the couch. Put distance between himself and the cushion where Ethan sat every night, the one that smelled like him, the one Noah could feel the shape of Ethan's body in if he pressed his hand into the fabric. Which he didn't do. Ever. Definitely not when Ethan wasn't home. "It's fine. He's a good roommate." Him. "He is. He's clean. He cooks sometimes. He pays rent on time. And nothing. That's it." Riley set down his coffee with the deliberate precision of someone about to detonate something. "Noah, you've mentioned this man in every conversation we've had for 3 weeks. You told me about his laugh. His arms. The way he says your name. You used the phrase, casually devastating, to describe the way he eats garlic knots. So I need you to look me in the eye and tell me that nothing is what's happening here." Noah looked at the ceiling. The ceiling was safe. The ceiling didn't have dark eyes or calloused hands or a body that radiated heat like a generator. "It's complicated." "It's not complicated. It's a pattern." Riley leaned forward. "He's straight." "I know." "He's your roommate." "I know." "He's going to figure out whatever he's figuring out, and then he's going to freak out, and then he's going to pretend it never happened, and you're going to be the one left standing in the blast radius. Again." "I know, Riley." "Then why are you letting it happen?" Noah didn't answer. Because the answer was that Ethan's thumb had traced circles on his ankle for 60 seconds, and Noah had let it happen because the touch was so gentle, so unconscious, so achingly tender that it had short-circuited every defense he'd built in 3 years. Because when Ethan looked at him across the apartment, there was something in his eyes that Caleb had never had. Confusion, yes, but underneath it, a wanting so raw it was almost painful to witness. Because Noah was 27, and he'd been careful his whole adult life, and he was so fucking tired of being careful. Riley watched him not answer. His expression softened from interrogation to something worse, pity. "Absolutely not," Riley said quietly. "I know. He's straight." "I know. You're going to get crushed." "I know." Noah's voice cracked on the last word. "Just barely. Just enough." Riley was quiet for a long time. Then he reached across and squeezed Noah's wrist, brief, firm, the touch of someone who loved him enough to say the thing and stay after. "If he hurts you, I will make his life very difficult. You understand that?" "I understand." "Good." Riley picked up his coffee. "Now show me this tattoo he supposedly stares at. I want to see what's got a straight construction worker losing his mind." Noah laughed despite himself, and for a few hours with Riley there, the apartment felt like it belonged to him again, instead of to the ghost of a man whose hands he couldn't stop thinking about. Riley left around 3, after extracting a promise from Noah that he would think with the correct organ and call if things got worse. Noah walked him to the door, and Riley paused in the hallway, hand on the stairwell railing. "For the record," Riley said, If this were anyone else, if this were a guy who was out, who knew what he wanted, I'd be happy for you. You know that, right? I know. It's not about him being a bad person. It's about him being in a place where he could do a lot of damage without meaning to. And you've already taken enough damage from people who didn't mean to. Noah leaned against the doorframe. When did you get wise? I've always been wise. You just don't listen. Riley pointed at him. Think. Correct organ. Call me. He left. Noah closed the door and stood in the quiet apartment. Ethan's boots by the door. Ethan's flannel on the couch. The ghost of Ethan's soap hanging in the bathroom air. Every surface in this apartment held some trace of the man, and Noah moved through the rooms like someone navigating a minefield with a map he refused to read. He sat at his desk, tried to work, opened a project file and stared at it for 20 minutes without clicking anything. His mind kept drifting back to the morning, Ethan in the towel, 6 inches away, the brush of his arm, those 2 seconds of shared stillness that had more weight than some entire relationships Noah had been in. This was the problem with proximity. You couldn't maintain boundaries with someone whose body heat you could feel from 3 feet away. You couldn't stay guarded when every morning started with their presence and every night ended with their breathing through the wall. The apartment was 900 square feet of constant exposure, and Noah's defenses, built carefully, maintained religiously, tested and proven against lesser threats, were dissolving like sugar in hot water. He thought about Caleb. Not the good parts, the stolen touches, the whispered confessions at 2 a.m., the 2 months where Noah had felt for the first time like someone wanted him exactly as he was. He thought about the end. The party. The girlfriend. The way Caleb's eyes had slid past him like he was furniture, like the person he'd held in the dark the night before was someone he'd never met. The bathroom mirror afterward. The promise. He'd kept that promise for 3 years. 3 years of careful choices, of only dating men who were out and certain, of building walls high enough to block the exact kind of thing that was currently scaling them with construction worker arms and a crooked grin. Ethan came home at 4:30 with his left shoulder wrecked. Noah heard him in the hallway before the key turned, a grunt, the sound of a bag hitting the floor with more force than necessary, the slow creak of the door opening. Ethan stepped in and his face was tight with pain, his left arm hanging slightly wrong, his jaw set in the way Noah had learned meant he was hurting and would die before admitting it. What happened? Noah asked from his desk, pulling off his headphones. Caught a beam wrong. Shoulders fucked. Ethan dropped his work bag and tried to rotate the arm. Winced. Not dislocated. Just strained. It's fine. It's clearly not fine. You're holding your arm like it's not attached to your body. Ethan attempted a grin. It came out as a grimace. I've had worse. Sit down. I'll get ice. I don't need. Sit down, Ethan. Ethan sat. On the couch, because of course he did, in his spot, and Noah got ice from the freezer and a towel, and came back and stood behind the couch and realized, with a dropping sensation in his stomach, what was about to happen. Take your shirt off, he said. The words came out clinical. Professional. As if he said this to shirtless construction workers every day, and it meant absolutely nothing. Ethan pulled his shirt over his head with one arm, the motion awkward and pained. His shoulder was red, the muscle visibly knotted, the skin hot when Noah pressed the ice pack against it. Ethan hissed. Cold. That's generally how ice works. Smart ass. Noah held the ice for a few minutes, watching the redness fade. His hand was steady. His breathing was controlled. He was a professional human being who could touch another person's bare shoulder without his entire nervous system going haywire. Then Ethan said, Can you work on the knot? There's something locked up in there. I can feel it. Noah should have said no. Should have said, Go to a physical therapist. Should have said I can't put my hands on your bare skin and knead your muscles while you make sounds, because that is a thing that will happen. You will make sounds, and I am not equipped to survive that right now. Yeah, Noah said. Hold still. He set the ice aside. Put his hands on Ethan's shoulders. Both hands, palms flat against hot skin, his fingers finding the ridges of muscle that ran from Ethan's neck to his deltoid. The knot was obvious, a hard lump beneath the trapezius, dense and angry. Noah pressed his thumbs into it. Ethan's head dropped forward. Fuck, Ethan breathed. Right there. Noah worked the knot. Slow, deep pressure, his thumbs moving in small circles, and the parallel to last night to Ethan's thumb on his ankle was so precise and so devastating that Noah nearly laughed. Nearly. Instead he focused on the tissue beneath his hands, the way it resisted and then gave, the heat of Ethan's skin against his palms, the rise and fall of his breathing. Ethan groaned. Low. From the chest. A sound of relief and release that had no business being as sexual as it was, that went through Noah's spine like a current and settled hot and heavy at the base of his stomach. Noah's hands stuttered for half a second before he recovered. That hurt? Noah managed. No. Opposite. Ethan's voice was rough. Don't stop. Don't stop. 2 words. Completely innocent in context. Completely ruinous in Noah's body, which was interpreting them in ways that had nothing to do with shoulder rehabilitation and everything to do with the sound of Ethan's voice saying them. Low, unguarded, stripped of everything except want. Noah worked the muscle. His hands moved from the knot outward, kneading the tension from Ethan's traps, his fingers pressing along the ridge of his shoulder blade, his thumbs tracing the thick muscle on either side of his spine. Ethan's skin was hot and smooth and dusted with fine hair that Noah could feel against his palms, and every time Noah found a new point of tension and pressed into it, Ethan made that sound again, that low involuntary groan that was rewiring Noah's brain in real time. His hands slowed. Not because the work was done, because he'd realized that he was no longer working on a knot. He was touching Ethan. Running his hands over Ethan's bare back and shoulders, with a thoroughness that had crossed the line from therapeutic to something else several minutes ago, and Ethan hadn't stopped him. Ethan was leaning into it, his breathing slow and heavy, his head tipped forward, his body open and pliant under Noah's hands. Ethan's head tipped back. Slowly. Until he was looking up at Noah, his face upside down, his eyes half closed and dark with something that wasn't pain. Their eyes met. Noah's hands stopped, pressed flat against Ethan's shoulders. He could feel Ethan's pulse under his fingers. Fast. Much faster than it should have been for a man sitting on a couch, getting a shoulder rub. Their faces were close, Noah looking down, Ethan looking up maybe 10 inches apart, and in this inverted angle Ethan's mouth was right there, his lips parted, and the look in his eyes was raw and confused and hungry, and it was the most terrifying thing Noah had ever seen because it was real. Not curiosity. Not experimentation. Want. Pure, unprocessed, desperate want from a man who had no idea what to do with it. Noah could feel his own heartbeat in his fingertips, pressed against Ethan's skin. He could feel Ethan's heartbeat answering. Both too fast. Both aware. If I lean down right now, he'll let me kiss him. He's right there. He won't stop me. Noah didn't lean down. Ethan sat up abruptly. The connection broke like a snapped wire. Thanks? Ethan's voice was hoarse. He stood, grabbing his shirt from the couch. Didn't put it on. Just held it. Gonna, shower. Sure. Ethan walked to the bathroom. Didn't look back. The door closed, not all the way, because Ethan Cole had never once fully closed a door in this apartment, and a moment later the water started and Noah sank onto the couch, into the warmth Ethan had left behind, and pressed both hands over his face. His palms still smelled like Ethan's skin. He could still feel the man's pulse under his thumbs, running fast, betraying everything his mouth refused to say. I'm so fucked. They drank whiskey that night. Noah didn't know how it started. One of them produced a bottle from somewhere, and then there were glasses, and then they were on the couch in their usual positions, closer than they should have been, the shoulder incident hanging between them like smoke that neither would acknowledge. The first glass went down easy. By the second, Ethan's tongue loosened the way it did when alcohol thinned the walls he kept around everything real. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. He was looking at his glass, turning it in his hands, the amber liquid catching the lamplight. His left shoulder was bare. He'd never put the shirt back on after the shower, just pulled on sweatpants, and now he was sitting there shirtless with whiskey in his hand and his knee touching Noah's, and the whole scene was so charged it felt staged. "Sure," Noah said. "Carefully." "With Megan." 3 years. Ethan took a sip. 3 years, and I never once felt like I couldn't breathe around her. Never once lost track of what I was saying, because she walked into a room. Never once. He stopped. Took another drink. "Is that fucked up? Like, what does that say about me?" Noah chose his words like stepping stones across moving water. "Maybe it says she wasn't the right person." Maybe. Ethan was quiet for a moment. But what if it wasn't about her? What if it's me? What if I'm just, he gestured vaguely with the glass, built wrong? Wired for something that doesn't? He stopped again. Looked at Noah. The look was direct, unguarded, stripped clean by whiskey and the late hour and whatever was happening in the space between them on this couch. "Have you ever felt that?" Ethan asked. "Like you couldn't breathe around someone?" Noah's chest tightened. Because the answer was yes. The answer was right now, tonight, every night for 3 weeks. The answer was sitting next to him shirtless and asking him the question, without knowing he was the answer. "Yeah," Noah said quietly. "I have." "What's it like?" "Terrifying." Ethan huffed a laugh. "Sounds about right." They drank. The conversation drifted: work, family, the building's dysfunctional elevator, the bodega cat that had adopted the whole block. Easy talk that skirted the edges of everything they weren't saying, the whiskey making them both warm and loose and dangerous. By the third glass, Ethan was listing toward Noah like a boat finding its harbor. His knee was pressed hard against Noah's. His arm was behind Noah on the couch back, and this time his fingers weren't hovering, they were resting against the back of Noah's neck, warm and heavy, his thumb just touching the edge of Noah's hairline. Noah didn't say, "You're touching me." He didn't have the strength. "You know what I like about living here?" Ethan said. His voice was lower now. Rougher. The whiskey or something else? "What?" "You." Ethan's fingers moved against Noah's neck, a small, absent stroke, the same unconscious tenderness as the ankle. "You're easy to be around. I don't have to be anything with you. I just exist. And it's enough." He turned his head. They were close. Very close. Noah could see the flecks of green in Ethan's blue eyes, could smell the whiskey on his breath, could feel the heat of his body like a second skin. "Nobody's ever made me feel like just existing was enough." Noah's heart was in his throat. Literally, his pulse was so hard and high it felt like it was blocking his airway. "You're drunk, Ethan." "Yeah." Ethan didn't move. His hand was still on Noah's neck. His thumb still moving. His eyes still locked on Noah's with that raw, confused, starving expression that made Noah want to bridge the 4 inches between their mouths and ruin everything. "I'm drunk." Neither moved. The apartment was quiet. The bottle between them was nearly empty. The lamplight made everything gold and intimate, and Noah was sitting in the warm wreckage of every promise he'd made to himself, and he couldn't bring himself to get up. "We should go to bed," Noah said. The words came out softer than he intended. Ethan's eyes dropped to Noah's mouth. Stayed there. 2 full seconds, Noah counted them, because counting was the only thing keeping him from closing the distance. Then Ethan blinked. Looked away. His hand slid off Noah's neck. "Yeah. Probably right." Noah stood. Took the glasses to the kitchen. His legs were unsteady, and it wasn't the whiskey. He rinsed the glasses and gripped the edge of the sink, and breathed through the warmth that was flooding his body like a drug. When he came back, Ethan was standing in the hallway, leaning against his doorframe. Shirtless, sweatpants low, one arm braced above his head. The pose was devastating, his body long and lit by the hallway light, every line visible, his face in shadow except for his eyes which caught the light and held it. He was looking at Noah. Not at his face. At all of him. A slow, unhurried sweep from Noah's bare feet up his legs to his hips to his chest to his mouth. Not subtle. Not accidental. A man looking at another man, the way men look at things they want, but haven't given themselves permission to take. Night, Noah. Low. Slower than usual. The syllables of Noah's name spread out and waited, like Ethan was tasting them. Night. Ethan held his gaze for one more beat. Something moved in his expression, the edge of a decision not quite made, a word not quite spoken, a step not quite taken. Then he turned and disappeared into his room. The door stayed open. Noah went to his own room. Closed the door. All the way. Sat on the edge of his bed, put his head in his hands, and felt the afterimage of Ethan's eyes on his body like handprints on his skin. Riley's voice in his head, "You're going to get crushed." Noah's voice answering, "I know. I know. I know." But his hands were shaking and his heart was going, and his skin was still warm where Ethan's fingers had rested against his neck, and the truth, the one he couldn't say to Riley, the one he could barely say to himself, was that he didn't want to stop this. Whatever this was. Whatever it was becoming. He wanted it the way you wanted air when you'd been holding your breath too long. Desperately, involuntarily, with a need that had nothing to do with sense and everything to do with survival. He lay down. Stared at the dark ceiling. Through the wall, Ethan's mattress creaked as he settled in. The open door. Always the open door. An invitation Ethan didn't know he was issuing, or maybe, and this was the thought that kept Noah awake until 3 a.m., turning it over and over like a stone in his hand. Maybe he did. Chapter 5. 3 days after the whiskey night, and Ethan still couldn't get the image out of his head. Not one image. A whole goddamn reel. Noah's neck under his hand. The way Noah's pulse had jumped when Ethan's thumb grazed his hairline. The way Noah had said, "You're drunk," like it was the only thing standing between them, and something neither of them could take back. And the doorframe, Christ, the doorframe. Ethan standing there like some kind of shirtless idiot, looking at Noah the way he'd never looked at another human being in his life, and Noah looking back with those dark, careful eyes that saw everything and said nothing. He'd gone to bed that night vibrating. Not drunk, the whiskey had burned off by the time he hit the mattress. Just wired. Every nerve lit, his whole body tuned to the frequency of the man on the other side of the wall, and he'd lain there in the dark with his hand on his own chest and his cock hard against his thigh, and he hadn't touched himself. Not because he didn't want to. Because he knew if he did, it wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't be close to enough. What he wanted was on the other side of that wall, behind a closed door that might as well have been made of iron, and his own hand was a poor substitute for something he couldn't name and wouldn't let himself want. Except he wanted it. God, he wanted it. Monday. Work. He was useless. Miscounted rebar ties twice. Nearly walked into a scaffold pole. Jake pulled him aside during lunch. 2 men on an unfinished balcony overlooking a Queens side street, hard hats and sandwiches, and the kind of directness that only existed between guys who'd worked together long enough to skip the bullshit. "What's going on with you?" Jake asked. Not concerned exactly. More like a mechanic hearing an engine knock, diagnostic, practical. "Nothing." "Didn't sleep?" "You haven't slept in a week, apparently. You're making mistakes. On a site where mistakes mean somebody falls 30 feet. Jake bit into his sandwich, chewed, watched Ethan with the flat patience of a man waiting for truth. "Is this about the roommate?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Why would it be about the roommate?" "Because you went from talking about him every day to not mentioning him at all, and in my experience that usually means something happened." "Nothing happened." Jake looked at him. Long. Steady. The look of a man who didn't need to be told because he could see it on Ethan's face, the lack of sleep, the distraction, the way his eyes went somewhere else every time there was silence. Jake wasn't stupid. He wasn't perceptive in the way Noah was, all observation and restraint. He was perceptive the way construction guys were, blunt, structural, able to see when a load-bearing wall was compromised. "Okay," Jake said finally. "Nothing happened. But whatever nothing is, fix it. Before you get somebody hurt." He said it without judgment. Just a fact. And Ethan nodded and ate his sandwich and didn't fix anything. He thought about Noah on the drive home. He thought about Noah at every red light and every stop sign, and through every block of traffic between the job site in Queens and the apartment in Brooklyn. He thought about the sound Noah made when he laughed, not the polite laugh, the real one, the one that seemed to surprise even Noah, that came from somewhere deep in private. He thought about Noah's hands, on a keyboard, on a skillet handle, on Ethan's shoulders with a pressure that was careful and knowing and so fucking good that Ethan had wanted to melt into the couch and never move again. He thought about Noah's mouth. He thought about Noah's mouth constantly. The shape of it. The way it moved when he talked. The way it would feel against. He turned the radio up. Loud. Let somebody else's voice fill the space his own thoughts were trying to occupy. It didn't work. By the time he parked and climbed the 4 flights and put his key in the lock, his heart was beating like he was walking into something instead of walking home. And maybe he was. Maybe every time he opened this door, he was walking into something he didn't understand and couldn't control, and wasn't sure he wanted to stop. Noah was at his desk. Headphones on. Working. The late afternoon light was coming through the windows behind him, turning his edges gold, and Ethan stood in the doorway with his keys in his hand and his work boots still on, and stared at the back of Noah's head and felt his whole chest compress. I have to stop looking at him like this. Noah turned. Pulled one side of his headphones off. Hey. How was work? Fine. Long. Ethan dropped his bag. Toed off his boots. Normal. Be normal. What are you working on? Brand refresh for a coffee company. They want earthy but modern. Whatever that means. Sounds like something you'd be good at. Noah's mouth did the thing, the slight curl, the held-back smile. Thanks. Ethan went to the kitchen. Opened the fridge. Stared at its contents without seeing them. Behind him he could hear Noah's headphones go back on, the faint click of his mouse, the soft sound of him existing. Just existing. Being in the room. Being alive and warm and smelling like cedar, and being Noah, and Ethan was standing in front of an open refrigerator with his forehead resting against the freezer door, eyes closed, trying to talk himself out of something he'd already decided. He closed the fridge without taking anything out. He showered. Changed. Came back. The evening stretched ahead of them like a road with no guardrails. Friday night. They'd gotten through the week. Barely. A careful, excruciating dance of maintained distance that was somehow more intimate than the touching had been, because the effort of not touching made them both hyper-aware of every inch of space between them. They sat on the couch with a deliberate gap. They passed things in the kitchen without brushing hands. They made eye contact and held it a beat too long, and then one of them looked away, and the silence that followed was so thick Ethan could have choked on it. By Friday the tension was a physical presence in the apartment, a third roommate that took up all the remaining space and made the air feel thin. They ordered Thai food. Ate at the table instead of the couch, which felt like a concession and a retreat, and neither of them acknowledged it. Noah talked about his coffee company project. Ethan talked about a concrete pour that had gone sideways. Normal conversation. The words were normal. Everything underneath them was not. After dinner, they drifted to the couch because that's where they always ended up, and pretending otherwise would have been its own kind of admission. Ethan took his spot, center cushion, arm along the back. Noah sat next to him. Close but not touching. The gap between their thighs was 2 inches. The width of a fist. A chasm. A joke. They put on a movie. Something with subtitles that required attention neither of them had. The apartment was dark, just the TV light and the ambient glow of the city through the windows. The air conditioning hummed. The building settled. Everything was quiet and charged and waiting. An hour in, Ethan couldn't take it anymore. His arm was along the back of the couch behind Noah, where it always was. His hand was resting behind Noah's shoulder, where it always rested. But tonight, with a week of enforced distance compressing into this moment, his fingers moved. Deliberately. Down from the couch back, brushing the fabric of Noah's shirt, finding the curve of his shoulder, settling there. Not hovering. Touching. Noah didn't move. Didn't stiffen. Didn't say, "You're touching me." He just breathed in, out, slow, controlled, and Ethan felt the discipline in that breath, the effort of it, and something inside him cracked at the knowledge that Noah was working this hard to hold still. Ethan's fingers moved again. Along Noah's shoulder to his neck. The pads of his fingers grazed the warm skin above Noah's collar, found the line where fabric ended and body began, and settled there. Skin on skin. He could feel Noah's pulse. Fast. Faster than his breathing suggested. The discrepancy between Noah's controlled exterior and his hammering heart sent a jolt through Ethan's system that landed between his legs and stayed. The movie played. Neither watched. Ethan's thumb found the edge of Noah's hairline. Traced it. A slow, deliberate stroke along the soft hair at Noah's nape, the same unconscious tenderness from the ankle, except this time it wasn't unconscious at all. Ethan knew exactly what he was doing. He was touching Noah because he wanted to touch Noah, because not touching Noah had become physically painful, because his hand on the back of Noah's neck was the only true thing in his entire fucked up, confused, terrified life right now. Noah's breathing changed. Not controlled anymore. Shallow. Quick. His hands were still in his lap, fingers curled, knuckles white. Ethan. Noah's voice was barely a whisper. The name carried everything, warning and want, and the particular agony of someone who knows they should stop something and can't. Yeah. Ethan's voice was low. Rough. Not a question. What are you doing? I don't know. You do know. Silence. The TV flickered. Blue light moved across their faces. Yeah, Ethan said. I know. His hand was still on Noah's neck. His thumb still moving. Noah hadn't pulled away, hadn't told him to stop, and the absence of resistance was its own kind of answer. They were sitting in the dark on a couch they'd shared for a month, Ethan's hand on Noah's neck, both of them vibrating at a frequency that was about to shatter glass. Noah turned his head. Slowly. Like the motion cost him something. He turned and Ethan was right there, inches away, his hand on Noah's neck and his face so close Noah could see the flecks of green in his eyes even in the dim light, could see the fear in them, could see the want underneath the fear, naked and desperate and so raw it made Noah's chest physically hurt. Ethan's gaze dropped to Noah's mouth. He didn't try to hide it. Couldn't, maybe. His eyes traced Noah's lips the way his thumb had traced the ankle, the hairline, slow, deliberate, hungry. When he looked back up, his pupils were blown and his breathing was ragged, and his hand on Noah's neck had tightened, fingertips pressing into skin. Noah. Ethan's voice was wrecked. A sound Noah had never heard from him, stripped of confidence, stripped of humor, stripped of every defense mechanism Ethan Cole had ever built. Just his name, said like a prayer by a man who'd never learned to pray. Noah's hand came up. Found Ethan's jaw. His fingertips traced the sharp line of it, rough with stubble, warm, a jaw that clenched when Ethan was holding something back. He was clenching now. The muscle jumped under Noah's touch. They were close enough to breathe each other's air. Close enough that Noah could feel the heat pouring off Ethan's skin like a fever. Close enough that their lips were separated by an inch of charged darkness and closing. Ethan leaned in. Slow. So slow it was agonizing, every millimeter a decision, every fraction of distance a wall coming down. His hand tightened on Noah's neck, pulling him closer, and Noah could feel the tremor in Ethan's fingers, the fine shaking of a man doing something that terrified him and doing it anyway. Ethan's forehead touched nose. Their noses brushed. Noah could feel Ethan's breath against his mouth, warm, shaking, coming too fast, and he could feel his own heart trying to exit his body through his throat. "He's going to kiss me. He's actually going to." Ethan's phone screamed. The ringtone shattered the silence like a brick through a window, loud, shrill, obscenely normal in a moment that was anything but. Jake's name lit up the screen on the coffee table, casting a rectangle of white light across their faces. Ethan jerked back. Not slowly. Violently. Like he'd been shocked. His hand came off Noah's neck. His body recoiled into the corner of the couch, and the cold air rushed into the space between them like water filling a wound. His chest was heaving. His eyes were wide. The phone kept ringing, Jake's name flashing in the dark, insistent, oblivious. Noah sat very still. His hand was still in the air where Ethan's jaw had been. He lowered it slowly. Placed it on his own knee. His face was carved from marble, expressionless, controlled, the mask he'd spent 3 years perfecting snapping into place so fast it was almost audible. The phone rang a fourth time. A fifth. Ethan grabbed it. Didn't answer. Just held it, staring at the screen, his thumb hovering over the button, using Jake's name as a life raft in a sea he'd been drowning in willingly. The ringing stopped. Voicemail. The apartment was silent. The TV was still playing, the movie none of them had been watching, casting blue light across a scene that had changed everything and resolved nothing. Noah stood up. "I'm going to bed." His voice was steady. Flat. The voice of a man who had assembled himself from scattered pieces in the space of 3 seconds and was holding the construction together through sheer force of will. "Noah?" "Good night, Ethan." No inflection. No anger. No sadness. Just words, spoken with the clinical precision of someone cauterizing a wound. Noah walked down the hallway with the measured steps of a man who would not let himself run. His door closed behind him. The latch caught. The sound was soft and final, and it hit Ethan harder than a slammed door ever could. Ethan sat on the couch alone. The phone in his hand. The ghost of Noah's breath on his mouth. The phantom warmth of Noah's jaw under his fingertips. The movie playing to no one. He sat there for a long time. His body was in open revolt. His cock was hard against his thigh, aching, insistent. His body didn't care about the interruption, didn't care about the fear, didn't care about the fact that Ethan Cole had just been a breath away from kissing his male roommate, and the only reason he hadn't was a phone call from a man who would never know what he'd interrupted. But it wasn't the arousal that kept him on the couch. It was the feeling behind it, the thing that lived underneath the want, deeper and more dangerous. The hollowness that had opened in his chest when Noah pulled away. The flash of Noah's face in the moment before the mask came down, not anger, not surprise. Resignation. The face of someone who'd seen this movie before and already knew the ending. He expected that. He expected me to flinch. Ethan pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes. He thought about calling Jake back. Normal. Anchoring. A conversation about the weekend, about work, about anything that wasn't the feeling of Noah's skin under his thumb, and the way Noah had said his name like it was the last word of a sentence he'd never get to finish. He didn't call Jake. He sat in the dark and let the truth he'd been outrunning for a month settle over him like something heavy and inevitable. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't the experimental itch of a man who'd never questioned himself and suddenly found a question worth asking. It was Noah. Specifically, singularly, devastatingly Noah. The way he laughed. The way he cooked. The way he said, "You're touching me," with the practiced calm of someone who'd learned to survive this exact situation. The way he looked at Ethan with eyes that saw through every defense and chose every time not to push. The way his pulse hammered under Ethan's fingers, even as his voice stayed level, the gap between what he showed and what he felt, visible only to someone close enough to feel it. And Ethan was close enough. He was exactly that close. And he wanted to be closer. He wanted to go down the hallway. Knock on Noah's door. Say something. Say anything. Say I almost kissed you, and the only thing I feel about that is that I didn't. He didn't move. He sat on the couch with his phone in his hand and the vibrating wreckage of the almost in his chest, and he didn't move, because the version of himself that could walk down that hallway and knock on that door and say those words didn't exist yet. He was being built, molecule by molecule, out of tension and proximity, and the slow, devastating erosion of everything Ethan had thought he knew about who he was. But he wasn't finished. Not yet. So he sat. And he didn't sleep. And every time he closed his eyes he saw Noah's face in the blue TV light, lips parted, eyes dark, hand on Ethan's jaw, leaning in with a tenderness that said, I know this is going to hurt me and I'm choosing it anyway. And the worst part, the part that kept Ethan on the couch until the sky outside turned gray with pre-dawn light, was that he'd been choosing it too. He'd been choosing it every day for a month. And the phone call hadn't stopped him. It had just delayed the inevitable. Saturday morning. He must have fallen asleep on the couch because he woke there, stiff, disoriented, the early light cutting through the windows and landing on his face like an accusation. His phone was dead on the coffee table. His neck ached. His mouth tasted like stale Thai food and regret. The apartment was quiet. He sat up, rubbed his face, listened. No coffee maker gurgling. No keyboard clicking. No fan humming through the wall. The stillness had a quality to it that made his stomach drop, not empty but held. Waiting. Noah's door was closed. Ethan stood. His body felt wrong, heavy, incoordinated, like he was moving through something thicker than air. He walked to the kitchen. Made coffee because it was the only act of normalcy he could manage. His hands went through the motions, filter, grounds, water, button, while his brain replayed the night in an infinite, merciless loop. His hand on Noah's neck. Noah's pulse under his thumb. Noah turning his head. Those dark eyes close enough to drown in. The lean. The breath. The inch of darkness between their mouths that had contained the entire future of whatever they were and would never be and couldn't stop becoming. And then Jake's ringtone, tearing through it like a saw through wood. And Noah's face afterward. The mask. The flat voice. The closed door. I'm going to bed. Good night, Ethan. Not angry. That was the thing that gutted him. Noah hadn't been angry. He'd been prepared. He'd been braced for exactly this, for the interruption, for the retreat, for the straight guy to flinch at the moment of truth and scramble backward like he'd touched something hot. Because Noah had lived this before. Someone else had leaned in and pulled away, and Noah had been the one left holding the wreckage, and he'd sworn never again, and here was Ethan Cole acting out the same scene with different lighting. The coffee maker beeped. Ethan poured a cup. Stood at the counter. Waited. Noah's door opened at 8:15. He came out in joggers and a t-shirt, hair sleep mussed, face neutral. He walked to the kitchen without looking at Ethan, poured coffee from the pot Ethan had made, added nothing, and drank standing at the counter. 3 feet between them. The Grand Canyon. Morning, Ethan said. His voice was rough from the sleepless night. Morning. Nose was even. Smooth. The controlled register that meant the walls were up and reinforced. Silence. Ethan wanted to say 100 things. He wanted to say, I wasn't pulling away. The phone went off and I panicked, but I wasn't pulling away. He wanted to say, I haven't stopped thinking about it. About you. About what would have happened if Jake hadn't called. He wanted to say, I'm sorry, and I'm scared and I don't know what I am, but I know what I want, and it's you, and I need you to know that, even if I can't say it out loud yet. What he said was, about last night. Don't? Noah set his mug down. Looked at Ethan for the first time that morning. His eyes were tired. Not with sleep deprivation, with something older, heavier. The tiredness of a man who had been through this before and recognized every mile marker on the road. You don't have to explain. Nothing happened. The words hit Ethan like a closed fist. Nothing happened. The same words he'd used after the first night on the couch, after the ankle, after every moment that had meant everything and that he'd dismissed as nothing. Hearing them from Noah's mouth, delivered with perfect practiced calm, was like watching his own cowardice reflected back at him in a mirror he couldn't look away from. Noah? We're good, Ethan. Noah picked up his coffee. His hand was steady. His voice was steady. Everything about him was steady in a way that told Ethan how unsteady he actually was underneath, how much effort this performance required, how close the cracks were to the surface. We're roommates. We're good. He took his coffee to his desk, put on his headphones, started working. Ethan stood in the kitchen holding a mug that was going cold, and felt something shift inside him, not a crack this time but a fracture. Deep. Structural. The kind of damage that didn't show on the surface, but changed the load-bearing capacity of everything above it. Nothing happened. Something had happened. Something was happening. Something had been happening since the day he moved in, and calling it nothing was the biggest lie Ethan had ever told, and hearing Noah say it back to him, hearing the man he'd almost kissed use his own words as armor, was the thing that finally made him understand what he was doing. What he'd been doing. The damage he was inflicting on someone who deserved better than a man who could almost, who could nearly, who could everything except the one thing that mattered. He drank his coffee. It tasted like ash. He didn't bring it up again that day. Or the next. Or the one after that. But something had changed in the space between them. Not the tension which was still there, still thick, still breathing, but the shape of it. Before, it had been a question. Now it was a countdown. And Ethan could feel the clock ticking in every silence, every glance, every night on the couch where they sat close but didn't touch, and the distance between them hummed with everything they hadn't done, and everything they were going to do, and the only question left was when.
Ethan Cole is sitting on a couch in the dark, phone in his hand, the ghost of Noah's breath still on his mouth. A door clicked shut at the end of that hallway, and the man on the other side just said nothing happened. And both of them know that's the biggest lie in the apartment. My Straight Roommate by Jace Wilder. The full novel is available now. Link in the description. And if you need the bonus chapter that was too hot for Amazon, that link's there too. Thanks for listening. See you next episode.